All right, thank you for being here tonight. I'm somewhat disappointed in the size of the crowd, but we'll deal with that. My name is Olin Neal, and I'm with the Orange County Planning Division. It is great to be with you guys tonight. We're glad to have such a great turnout, seriously. As you know, we're here tonight to talk about the Lake Picket development applications that have been submitted to the county. And we have a quite lengthy agenda tonight, so I'm not going to take up too much of your time in the beginning. This is our agenda. I'm going to do some quick introductions and purpose of the meeting, talk about the site very generally. We're going to talk about the project schedule, where we go from here. We're going to do a transportation impact analysis update. Renzo Nastasi with our transportation planning division is going to update you on that. And then we're going to basically turn it over to the applicants. Now we have two separate applicants tonight, and they both have presentations. And after each one of their presentations, we're going to open it up. We have two microphones up in the front. We're going to ask you all to come form single-family lines on either side to ask each applicant questions. Now, we only have 2 hours tonight, and there's absolutely no way we're going to be able to get through the entire agenda unless we kind of stick to our schedule. The good news is, this is just the first meeting of 3 meetings. We're at this first meeting on April 28th. We have 2 more meetings. One is May 12th, and the third one is May 19th. These are all the preliminary community meetings before the first public hearing. So if you don't have an opportunity to speak tonight because of our tight schedule, we're supposed to be out of here in 2 hours. Keep in mind that you have 2 more opportunities to express yourself before the public hearings. Some quick introductions. We have an all-star cast of Orange County staff with us tonight. I'm not going to introduce them all, but I can tell you that over the next 3 months, actually 2 months, prior to the first public hearing, various staff members will have the responsibility of reviewing these applications. And we have representatives from the Planning Division, Transportation Planning, Environmental, we have Public Works, Public Utilities, Fire Rescue, the Parks and Recreation Division is here, and I'm sure I'm leaving some out. But some introductions of note, we have our Planning Manager, Alberto Vargas, with us tonight. He's also my supervisor. We have Renzo Nastasi with the Transportation Planning Division. He's right here to my left, your right. He'll be speaking to you in just a moment. And we have 2 commissioners with us. We have Commissioner Rick Baldacci. He is your local planning agency representative on the Orange County Local Planning Agency Board and the Planning and Zoning Commission. He was appointed by the Board of County Commissioners to rep you in District 5. The first public hearing will be before Commissioner Baldacci and his board. And then last but not least, we are always glad to have Commissioner Ted Edwards with us tonight. Ted is your elected representative for District 5, and he's here to listen and take your comments tonight. So, why are we here? Well, we have 2 privately initiated map amendments. These are not staff-initiated amendments. These are privately initiated map amendments. For those, most of you probably know where the properties are, and we'll get into some maps about those properties shortly. But they're 2 separate applications. They are contiguous to one another. One is called Lake Picket South. The other one is called Lake Picket North. These are the application numbers. You'll be seeing those numbers a lot as we go through the review process. Along with those map amendments, we're talking about future land use map changes. We're not talking about zoning. We're talking about future land use, which is a generalized land use designation. There are some comp plan policies that are proposed to create the development framework for these 2 map amendments if and when they were adopted. So keep in mind, we have the 2 map amendments and then a set of policy amendments that will help guide and frame the land use that's proposed. Okay, here's a map of the 2 properties. It's kind of hard, it's on an aerial map, but you can see the boundaries of the 2 properties in yellow. You can also make out the Econ-Lahatchie River on the left side of the screen. Obviously, the property to the north is Lake Picket North, and the other one is Lake Picket South. To the right of the screen, on the right side of the yellow boundaries, is the rural settlement area of Lake Picket, Corner Lakes, and Bithlo. To the north is the county line with Seminole County, and to the south is East State Road 50. Just a quick history of the applications. Just since 2009, we have already received 5 different applications for properties in this little area as known as Lake Picket. The first one was a development of regional impact. It was called the Bible Property Project. That was in 2009. There have been various other applications that have been submitted. For one reason or another, they never made it to the adoption stage, and so that brings us to the property today. This is our future land use map. This is the map that the applications that are in the county today is requesting to change. That light green color on the future land use map is our rural agricultural future land use designation. The rural agricultural designation allows for residential development at a maximum density of 1 home per 10 acres. It's a very, very low density designation. It's the lowest designation we have in the county. Now, if you look to the left, it's very hard to see, but there's a little red line just on the other side of the econ. That's our urban service area. Everything to the left of that, or to the west of the that boundary, is called our urban service area. And that's where we actually encourage a lot of a significant amount of our development. It's where public services are in place for the most part. The minimum densities in the urban service area are generally 4 units to the acre, and all kinds of non-residential development. When you look to the right of the Lake Picket properties, you'll also notice there's some yellow and some darker green. That is the rural settlement properties. Now that is a higher density development scenario than what the property is today of Lake Picket North and Lake Picket South. But it's not as high as what you'll find on the other side of the urban service area. The yellow area, which is located in the Corner Lake subdivision, is actually 4 units per acre, similar to what you'll find in the urban service area. The dark green is a rural settlement 1-to-1 designation, which allows 1 dwelling unit per acre. So as you can see, even though the properties that we're talking about tonight, and the applicants have submitted applications on, are designated 1 per 10, they've got slightly higher intense development patterns to the east and to the west. So our development framework, as I mentioned before, the applications that are in place are to talk about, are to change the future land use, that map that we just looked at. Future land use is a very generalized designation. It just, again, generally designates what types of development can take place on property. What you're most probably familiar with is zoning. Zoning is much more specific, and it outlines various types of uses that have been determined to be suitable for property. Zoning gets much more specific than what we're talking about tonight. Zoning talks about building heights, setbacks, the lot layout of a project. For non-residential development, zoning speaks to landscaping, lighting, signage, a lot of the more detailed aspects of development. Tonight, we're only talking about the future land use designations, however, because that's what the applicant has submitted. At this point, the applicants have not submitted rezoning applications. That would come later in the process. Again, the future land use designation that the applicants are requesting, they're going to go through this in their own presentations, but they are requesting a designation called Lake Picket. It's a brand new proposed land use category specifically for these properties. If it were adopted, and we're talking about 7 months from now, and if it got through the transmittal phase, that land use would only be applicable to the Lake Picket properties we're talking about today. It couldn't be applied anywhere else in the county. You'll see later on, especially the next couple of community meetings, about you'll hear the word transect-based policies. Right now we have a land development code that is very archaic in nature. It basically focuses on separating land uses. The applicants in this case are proposing eventually a development pattern that focuses more on the form of development and trying to achieve compatibility with surrounding uses by the development of the site itself. Obviously, as part of this entire future land use map and in the process, public outreach is a part of it. When you read the policies that are proposed, and again, you'll be hearing about those policies in the next couple of meetings, public outreach and public communities like this are required. And then there's a conceptual regulating plan. It's just a very generalized map that shows how development on the site is anticipated to take place. When they get to the zoning stage, that conceptual regulating plan would turn into a final regulating plan if it were approved. So project schedule, We are in the comp plan amendment stage, the future land use map amendment phase. It's broken up into two parts. The first part is called transmittal. It's simply when staff and the Board of County Commissioners makes the determination as to whether or not these two applications, including the text policies, have the merits to be considered for further consideration beyond the next couple of public hearings that are scheduled. If by some, for whatever reason, the Board of County Commissioners determines that the applications have not passed that straight face test and they shouldn't be transmitted, then the requests are over at that point. However, if the board just chooses to transmit, all that means is that the requests will be sent on to the state of Florida for further review, and all of the regional agencies, and including the state, will have an opportunity to review the map applications and provide comments back to the county. Transmittal does not mean adoption, and I want to make that very clear. First of all, we're not second guessing the board on their decisions, but in the event that they were to transmit, that does not mean that they have to adopt when it comes back from the state. All that means if they do transmit, it just means it'll continue with the review process and proceed to that second adoption phase, and you can see the public hearings that are scheduled for that. So this is where we are tonight. This is the transmittal package. It's got a conceptual, the applications have conceptual regulating plans. They have justification statements that they're going to talk to you about tonight. They're going to talk to you more tonight about their development program, both for Lake Picket South and Lake Picket North. They have a transportation study that is in the process of being reviewed right now. And then again, we have many more community meetings before, not only the two before the transmittal public hearings, but we're going to have some community meetings after the transmittal if it gets transmitted. This is what happens after transmittal. The adoption package, we refine what they've submitted for the transmittal package. And that rezoning package, it doesn't necessarily mean they have to submit a rezoning package right away. They could wait. They could wait to see how they get, if they get past transmittal. They could wait to see if they get past adoption. At some point, however, if they get adopted, they will have to submit a rezoning package because the properties are currently zoned, for the most part, agricultural. So with that, I'm going to turn it over real quickly to Renzo DeStassi with the Transportation Planning Division, and we're about probably 5-10 minutes away from turning it over to the applicants for you to get more details.
Thank you, Owen. Again, my name is Renzo DeStassi. I'm with the Transportation Planning Division. Really want to thank you all for coming out this evening. As Owen mentioned, part of this process also involves evaluation of the potential impacts that these properties would cause on the surrounding network. So just to give you a sense, which I'm sure most of you are already aware, that we have a number of roadways that are over capacity in the vicinity of these two developments. So what this map depicts is the current conditions. So that what are the roadways that are failing today? And as you might imagine and probably well know, is that State Road 50 on the east side is failing, portions of Lake Picket are failing, and Chuleota Road is failing, Woodbury Road. But in addition to that, if we expand the map even further, we have roads like Avalon and Alafaya, University Boulevard, and so forth. So part of the process is to evaluate the overall impact that these two developments may have in the future should they proceed. This map depicts our planned improvements, so it's not only the county improvements, it's also the state and the expressway authority. So starting from the top of the map, the east-west road is actually called, for the time being, east-west road. That is a planned roadway. We have identified it as a public-private partnership, which means if that road is going to be built in the future, we would look for the development community to participate in the funding of that improvement. Again, just to give you a sense of where it's located, on the very top of the map is Seminole County, and then on the bottom there's State Road 50 and 408. So this would be a new roadway between those 2 points. In addition, you will note that both Chuleota and Lake Picket are identified as public-private partnerships. So part of this process would, should these 2 developments move forward, the county would expect these two developments to participate in the improvement of these roadways. Moving on to the 408, many of you may know that the Expressway Authority is currently undertaking a study to extend the 408 from its current terminus to 520. Now, they are only in the study phase, so to proceed, they have to complete the study, then they have to go to design, right-of-way construction, assuming that they find the project to be financially feasible. So that project is many years out, but at least there is a study that has already been initiated and funded. And then, of course, State Road 50, and I'll give you a little bit more detail on the status of State Road 50. So, as you know, portions of State Road 50 are currently under construction. I think the good news is that State Road 50 is going to be improved all the way to Old Cheney. It is currently under construction. That is a $70 million project. It will be late next year before this project is completed. And, you know, for whatever it's worth, once the road is completed, it's really going to relieve a lot of the traffic that you're experiencing today, because it also extends beyond the 408, which is why we want to put chocolate trim points. Beyond Old Cheney, there is a bridge improvement, which is also under construction currently. That is being widened to its ultimate 6-lane configuration. And then if we go from Old Cheney to 520, Florida Department of Transportation is currently funded a design that actually is underway. However, right-of-way construction are not funded at this point, at least not for the next 5 years. And I'll talk about how we might be able to advance that project in a few minutes. So, again, these are the roads that we've identified that are intimately involved with these two developments. And our expectation is that when we talk about Lake Picket Road, that the section from Lake Picket Road starting from State Road 50 to basically the western edge of Lake Picket South would need to be widened. Now, the applicants have submitted to us a few proposals which we have under consideration. So that first section of Lake Picket up to that western boundary would be a 4-lane roadway widened, but it would be contained within a 90-foot footprint. Typically, our roadways take up 120 feet of right-of-way. So, in respect to the desires of the community, by and large, to keep the area rural in character, rather than using our usual 120-foot footprint to accommodate a 4-lane section, we're evaluating the potential of fitting in the 4-lane section into 90 feet. Now, that is subject to the transportation study that we are currently evaluating, and also our county engineer will have to approve that cross-section, this concept. And then as we move to the east, again, still Lake Picket, we would keep that section of the roadway as it is today, rural without any drainage or curb and gutter. In respect to, again, Lake Picket, you see that dashed line sort of going to the northeast. That is a new alignment that the applicant in Lake Picket North has proposed. So the reason for us to leave Lake Picket east-west as a rural cross-section as its 2-lane configuration will depend on whether or not that new extension will pick up the traffic demand that is currently experiencing on Lake Picket. Similarly, when we talk about Juliota Road from 50 to Lake Picket, that would be the proposal is to widen it to 4 lanes, again within the 90-foot cross-section, or 90-foot footprint, and then from there north, leave it as a 2-lane as it is today. Again, I want to emphasize that depends on our evaluation of the traffic study and also the approval of the county engineer. Moving on, just to let you know what that cross-section might look like. This basically shows 4 lanes in 90 feet of right-of-way with a 10-foot multi-purpose path, a 6-foot sidewalk on the other side, and a 15.5-foot median. And again, there would be a 100-foot buffer on either side of the roadway. So the process, As Owen explained a little bit earlier on, our responsibility from the county side is to make sure that all the transportation impacts are coordinated, that we are going to be responsible for the cumulative assessment of these impacts. So in other words, we need to have an understanding of what both projects will generate in terms of traffic and what kind of impacts they'll have on our roadway network. We will also require these two developments to be interconnected. And when I say interconnected, it would be through the use of local streets. We're not talking about 4-lane roads. It's mostly local streets, 2-lane roads within a 60-foot right-of-way or less. Also, we would require that it's a multimodal system, meaning that it would have to be, these two projects would have to be interconnected by trail system, bicycle system, and so forth. And then, of course, the mitigation and financing plan would have to be tied to the development plan. In other words, there needs to be a solid commitment from these developers to address the transportation issues before any approvals occur. Again, this is just a picture depicting of what the current Lake Picket roadway looks like in its rural configuration. If the traffic studies show what the developers have proposed, sections of Lake Picket to the east and sections of Julietta Road on the north side would remain basically in this configuration as you see on the slide. Continuing with transportation, we are currently reviewing two separate studies that were submitted by each of the applicants. So we will be providing them with comments. Actually, we provided an initial set of comments. And they're going to be responsible for responding back to us and making sure that they satisfy all the questions and issues that we may have related to transportation. In addition, they will be required to initiate a term sheet and individual agreements. So just let me explain the term sheet very quickly. Basically, the term sheet is a framework or a tool that the county and the county commissioners can use to basically look at the overall impacts of each development and the commitments that each developer will make individually to address any transportation impacts that they would cause and how that would happen. So that the term sheet basically is a framework to encapsulate both projects and to address the mitigation process and time frame that would be tied to development. And then ultimately they would be required to enter into separate agreements because one developer might proceed before the other. So they will have separate agreements. And again, both in respect to the term sheet and to the agreement, the funding scenarios and will have to be addressed for Lake Picket, Julietta Road, who's going to pay for what, when, and how, and also any other improvements that we identified through our evaluation of transportation analysis. Lastly, Lake Picket South has proposed to advance State Road 50. I mentioned earlier that there may be a mechanism to advance that project. So what the developer has proposed is to work with the county and the Florida Department of Transportation to extend State Road 50 improvements from Old Cheney to Julietta Road. So we are in the midst of those discussions with both the developer and the Florida Department of Transportation to see if we can advance that project. Basically, that would entail the developer to advance the funding for the project, and then that will require an agreement with not only the Department of Transportation but also Orange County. So those discussions are underway. I think that's a good mechanism to get things moved along a lot faster. As I mentioned earlier, this last eastern section of State Road 50 is not funded in the Florida Department of Transportation work program beyond 2021, or prior to 2021, I should say. So the next steps, from the planning side, still obtaining comments from the community. That's why we're out here tonight. There will be 2 more meetings, at least for this initial phase, for you to provide comments and provide us with any issues that you may have. Planning will be going through the revision of the draft policy language and update the regulating plans. From the transportation side, we will finalize our cumulative impact that is looking at both projects and seeing what the cumulative impact of the development is going to be on the county network and the state network for that matter. and then identify the respective costs and assignments for each of the developments. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the development of a term sheet, which is that framework that looks at both projects together, and then the individual agreements. So these are our initial steps, and from here, I believe we're going to have the applicants give you the rest of the presentation.